Hi there, this is Homebody Rundown, and I wanted to give a yard tour. We are in southwest Michigan. I think it's Zone 5. I'm not terribly knowledgeable about gardening, but I enjoy it. I may get some plant names wrong, so I apologize in advance. We just had 2 cherry trees taken down in our front and backyards, so you'll see remnants of those. The house faces south, so the plants along the front of the house get full sun. Most of this was filmed mid-August. These are the flower beds at the end of the driveway. Overall, they're doing pretty well considering how many dogs are walked in the neighborhood. The Japanese forest grass are new. I think this one in the center is going to get too much afternoon sun. This barberry doesn't get enough sun, so not very much red on it. But I think this one will do great. It's already a nice size, and I just planted them in July. This fountain grass has been here several years, and it's doing fantastic. The ivy was here, I think, when we moved in. I'm probably going to need to pull it all out because it just gets into everything. I really like the burgundy edging on these grasses, and so far they don't block the view of the driveway. I just gave this barberry a massive trim in early summer, probably took over a foot of height off. And here is where I told my husband to dig a hole because it was definitely not where the drainage tube was. Gonna have to fix that. Most of the landscaping at the front of the house has been here for multiple years. Only the yew is original from when we moved in over 10 years ago. I'm really hoping to get this weeded and more stones added before winter. The lavender and weigela are new this summer. They've been getting watered multiple times a week as they are in full sun. These were the last 2 lilies I had out front because the deer had eaten the rest. I thought they may be safe being so close to the house. And I guess they were. The deer only ate all the flowers off. Under this Chinese dogwood is a Japanese forest grass I just planted last month. And you can see where I started adjusting the edge pavers. Over time they sink or tilt, so they do need some occasional maintenance. This is the west side of the front yard. I'd say about 1/3 of the plants in here were moved or planted here this year. We added the wood chips a couple months ago. The barberries are from the backyard. The grass and the multicolor fern are new. This little dogwood was planted last year. It does need a fence because the deer will eat it, at least until it gets some real size to it. These forsythia planted last fall seem very happy here. All the small stuff is new this year. The barberry is very green. It's in shade most of the day. This large tree is one of the biggest obstacles to planting here. It's a black walnut. Many things have just had to move out because they couldn't survive near it. But grasses, barberries, and boxwoods don't seem to mind. Or the forsythia. We moved this false cypress from the end of the driveway this year. It was looking rough, but it seems to be okay here so far. Almost all the lamb's ear in the yard is new and doing wonderfully. I think I'll have to get more in the spring. The lavender also seem really hardy. This one isn't doing well, but some critter dug it up at least twice after I planted it. We have skunks and woodchucks around, but I'm not sure what it was. This little blue spruce is probably the most favorite thing I've ever bought. Also, the most expensive by far. I think it was $60. It has such a beautiful blue color, and I really wanted it here, but it's a big gamble by this walnut tree. I'm hoping if it gets stressed, I'll be able to notice and move it in time. This 9 bark is new. It will get to be 5 to 8 feet tall and wide. This hibiscus is finally flowering. It's late to the game, but seems to have perked up. I think it didn't get enough water early on. I also had to spray it because something was eating the leaves. Maybe Japanese beetles. I never saw them. But I am happy to see all these buds. I transplanted some red buds along this fence section. This one is doing well and has a lot of new leaves. Just moved some Russian sage to this area a few weeks ago. At first, it pretty much died back completely, but now they both have new growth. This is a work in progress. I want to have a flower bed along this entire section of white fence. So last year we started moving some things to this area. I've been gathering a few extra edge blocks to start the new bed. We moved 4 lilacs here last summer. They seem to have some powdery mildew. This one was only a couple inches tall when we transplanted it, so it's put on some good growth. So has this one, probably 3 feet. Just bought this little guy last month. It's so cute. I think it's a juniper of some sort. This was planted early summer. It's a weigela and will fill this corner in with beautiful reddish purple color. And it's hard to discern in all the weeds, but several other transplants here, including lavenders and sedum. Also this fern, not sure what kind it is. This is the same type of dogwood that's little and out front. The deer don't seem to bother it too much at this size, but the bugs love it. Although not as much as viburnum. I think I'm going to pull all the small viburnum because they just get destroyed every year. And I don't want to spray something this size. Forsythia was put in last fall. And another viburnum with insect damage. This is a volunteer redbud. They pretty much grow like weeds here. I planted this thorn apple, but the deer ate it to the ground, so I need to move it. Added in some grasses and another forsythia. This one gets a lot of shade, but seems good so far. And it has some new growth. Moved a redbud here, which died pretty quickly, but now there's new growth. And a lot of moss in this area. I know nothing about moss except that I like it. I just love the color. Plus, in the shade, grass doesn't grow well anyway. I know a lot of people try to eliminate it, but I'm encouraging it and even watering it sometimes. This white pine doesn't grow much. I think it's at least 11 years old, but to be fair, deer ate the top off of it when it was little. I don't know if we'll keep this. We took down all of our big spruce because they had a disease of some kind. This flower bed is under a redbud and a dogwood tree. There's a lot of shade. When we bought this place, I imagined hostas here, and I did plant a bunch, but the deer just mow them down. So now I have some Siberian iris, lots of ferns, astilbes, and just added in some Japanese forest grass. I had started a flower bed here under a maple and sassafras tree, but things were not doing well, so took it all out. Now I just want something around this front tree, so added in an ostrich fern, which can be up to 4 feet tall. And when we took off our deck, I needed to move this big grass. It was so large, we split it into 3. This area does get afternoon sun, so these have needed a lot of water. But the deer don't bother grasses. This setup is new this season. We've added 7-foot deer fence around the perimeter of this corner. My goal is to move in most of the plants that the deer and I both love. Planted 3 clematis along the south side of the garden shed. All 3 are still alive, but only this one seems to be putting on any real growth. The deer ate pretty much every leaf off this hydrangea last year, so it moved this spring, split it in 2, moved in loads of what I thought were purple cone flowers, but apparently are brown-eyed Susans, or black-eyed Susans, I'm not sure. The deer mow them off every year, so I haven't seen flowers in ages. This little pine, or spruce, has been here for over 5 years. It seems to never grow, but I did add drip hose to it this year, so that should help. A burning bush. This speedwell is new and doesn't seem too happy. Volunteer barberry growing in this Russian sage. This sedum has recovered nicely. Some of the neighbors had larger sedum that the deer didn't seem to bother, so I bought several. It didn't go well, so I moved most into the fence. I like the purple on this one. This lamb's ear was planted last year. It put on a lot of size this year, but has some spotting on the leaves. I'm not sure if that's normal. Another rescued sedum. Put a snapdragon in here, so hopefully we'll reseed next year and fill this space. Some of the hostas are still in bloom. The goal is to move almost all hostas to this space and really let it fill in. I think my personal gardening style is overcrowded. I love it, and hopefully less weeds will make it through. This astilbe is not looking awesome. The ferns will probably move out of this space to fill in where I take out hostas. I'm pretty sure the deer or bunnies have eaten them when they are really small and tender, so they may need fencing for a bit. Here's the other half of the hydrangea. It needs consistent watering in this clay soil. A golden barberry. These definitely need a new home, but it will have to be fenced. Gave all the boxwoods major trims this year. They have struggled the last maybe 4 years with what we think is a leaf miners infestation. I was working near a boxwood several years ago and it was making noise. I had to have my husband come listen and we found all of them were making noise. So they look so awful with so many dead leaves. I strongly considered tearing them all out. But last year they really started to make improvements and put on new growth. We didn't treat them, so I was pleasantly surprised. This is a butterfly bush from my in-laws. It's probably 6 years old. I'm not sure about this hosta. It's called Wiggles and Giggles. I love the unique leaves, but it seems to have struggled, especially to keep its bright color. Phlox planted last year doing really well in this mostly shade spot. Part of our lot is wooded and there are some very tall trees. Most of these that you see are ours. But my favorite trees are not tall. They are these pawpaws. They are an understory tree. I just love how tropical they look. We don't have a lot of that in Michigan. And the leaves can be huge. Plus, the deer leave them alone. We started this raspberry patch and just put the wood chips down a couple weeks ago. We also have a few blueberries and a blackberry bush, but they need to be moved. They don't get enough sun here. We'll wait to do that when it cools down this fall. We cut down some large honeysuckles recently, and when the tree company was here taking down the big cherry trees, they ground these stumps too. Just picked up this rose in July. It was looking pretty rough for a while, but it has lots of new growth now. I love how delicate these flowers look. The tag says blushing knockout rose. I know nothing about roses, but I would like to get more. First though, we will see if they are eaten because they are expensive. This is the old vegetable garden. It's mostly a staging area because it's coming out next spring. These hollyhocks were grown from seeds my grandpa gave us years ago. They ended up all being pinks or reddish pinks. And the bees love them. This peach tree has been here maybe 10 years. It was just a skinny thing when we picked it up at Lowe's. It's pretty loaded with fruit this year. So yeah, I planted a few mint seeds last year. These snapdragons are from seeds planted this spring. My husband just collects some seeds every fall for the next year. Volunteer tomatoes. This used to be a vegetable garden, and last year we had our compost pile here. More tomatoes growing in the peonies. A volunteer raspberry. Need to transplant this to the new bed. Lots of things here will move when we put in our new patio area. For now, they need to be protected inside a fence. Multiple coral bells and lilies. My sister-in-law brought me some little marigolds this spring, and they really took off. And had several mums survive the winter. I usually plant the ones I buy in the fall, but it's probably 50-50 whether they come back. Also some peonies I transplanted from my parents' place. Another area I want to turn into a flower bed. This sad boxwood was originally going to be a bonsai, but as you can see, it's not doing well, so we'll see if it makes it. The hostas under this oak need to be moved this fall into the deer fenced area. Not looking forward to that. There are so many here, and we will split them into more. Most of this area is all new this year. Added a 9-bark, an azalea, and a weigela. This is the second bloom for the weigela. Moved this lamb's ear, phlox, 2 lilacs, and several grasses here as well. And another dogwood. My husband started this from seed from the larger plant we bought. This is the original established part of the flower bed. This is a reblooming lilac. I've been expanding this area out a little bit, so most of the smaller stuff is new. I just love the bright red barberry. Along the east side of the house now, this grass is out of control. And as usual, this Russian sage seems to have some kind of mite, so I've been spraying it. More volunteer redbuds. Barberries do spread. This is a baby I found and moved here. We actually cut this huge juniper back by maybe half last year, but I think we need to do it again. More crazy large grass. I want to remove this one. I really like this little golden globe. The rest of these shrubs have been here for at least several years. Love the color of these. I believe this is a Chinese dogwood. And this little guy is new, Blue Star Juniper. This mess is where our deck was. I plan to add a permanent fence around this area after we put in a new patio. Lots of potted plants from the deck. Had to start spraying this rose because it was being attacked by something. But the new growth looks healthy and lots of buds. This is the first year I put coral bells in pots, and I love it. There are so many colors, and the hummingbirds love them. Some backyard turkey visitors. This bunch flock has the smallest babies. Some of the others in the neighborhood look twice the size. So those are the highlights from the yard. Thanks for watching.